Welcome to the Be Bold podcast. I'm Beth Whitman. My guest today is Paula Froelich. When Paula was the deputy editor for page 6 of the New York Post, Keith Olbermann named her Worst Person of the Year. Keith, for those of you who don't know, is a sports and political journalist, and all you need to do is Google Paula Froelich and Keith Olbermann to find out what went down with their online spat a number of years ago. Anyway, Paula wears this badge with honor and includes it at the top of the About page on her website, which is abroadabroad.com. Along with that distinguished title, Worst Person of the Year, she also lists the fact that Time magazine named her Person of the Year 3 times, and that was in 1975, 2006, and 2011. Perhaps equally as wonderful, and you can insert some snark here, her website quotes our current president as saying, Paula Froelich knows what she is talking about. All this is to say that you know from the get-go that Paula's got a good sense of humor, especially when it comes to Paula. Before I get to our conversation today, a couple of notes for you. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. My goal here is to present you with one-on-one, in-depth conversations with courageous and extraordinarily bold women who have inspirational stories to share. These women come from a wide range of backgrounds and are definitely on different paths and at different stages in their lives. But the one thing they have in common is that they are bold in what they do. I know from personal experience that when we hear about other people's struggles and successes that we're inspired because we learn that other people's paths may not have always been smooth, and none of us have it easy, right? So we can relate to that. I'm sure that you'll always hear a gem or two, some bit of wisdom or inspiration that will hit home for you in these conversations, and today's with Paula is no different. A couple of other quick reminders. If you're interested in travel, you can find out about the tours I lead by going to wandertours.com. I've got a number of women-only trips coming up, including one to North India this fall and one to South India in the early part of next year, 2019. And I've got one in the works for Ireland for the fall of 2019, so keep an eye out for that one. You could also join me on a co-ed trip to Papua New Guinea if you're feeling a little bit more adventurous, and that's next year, next August. Ladies can join our Be Bold Facebook group, where we have a community of over 2,600 women who share their bold moves, or they're just there looking for encouragement from others, and that is a wonderful tribe. As always, you can find links to things we talk about in each episode in the show notes at beboldpodcast.com or on whatever platform you're using to listen to this episode. I'd love to hear your feedback. Send me a note at beth@beboldpodcast.com and let me know what you think. You can also leave voice feedback or ask a question by calling 877-280-5170. I'd love to grow our community by featuring you and your questions on a future show. Okay, back to Paula. In our conversation today, you're going to hear the story about how Paula and I met, which was very memorable for me. That encounter and the story around it pretty much sets the tone of the conversation and also exemplifies exactly what Paula is all about. And when you hear that, you'll understand why I was so eager to chat with her for the podcast. Paula and I hit upon a variety of topics, including her very early interest in travel, which goes back to the 3rd grade. But she's also got some keen observations about women and travel today and why many of us travel in general, and what she's learned about herself and how she approaches her trips. I don't want to say too much more, but in short, I think that everyone should have a Paula in their life. She is a truth teller and she doesn't hold back for better or worse. And I fully admit that I love it. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as I enjoyed sitting down with Paula Froelich. Why don't you just start by telling me a little bit about your neighborhood? I grew up in New Jersey and used to come to the city quite
Where in New Jersey?
Bergen County, Mahwah.
Oh,
Mahwah.
I used to drive through Mahwah on the way to the Catskills.
Yes, exactly. The meeting place. That's what they say, Native American term.
Well, I mean, a long time ago.
Yeah. I know, a long time ago. I lived there as well. I've been in Seattle 28 years now. But I used to come into the city. the big city and hang out on Bleecker Street, which is just around the corner from here. And I just walked by the bitter end and I was like, oh my gosh, I remember that. It's so great. But why don't you describe your neighborhood here? Because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, like it's actually really funny. I thank God for it every day. I moved here again by accident. Almost the most amazing things in my life have all happened by accident. I'm not really a one by design. Anytime I try to orchestrate something, it really just seems to like fall flat. And I'm like, oh, I think it's just supposed to kind of happen weirdly. So I almost got married twice. So the first time I was just like, it's not working out. And we were living together. And so I put the word out to everyone I knew because I didn't want to pay a fee. And I said, if anyone knows any landlords, let me know. And somebody did. And this was the first place I saw. It was a rent stabilized 1-bedroom in Soho. I'd always wanted to live in Soho. I walk in, I go, I'll take it.
You mean rent stabilized, meaning once you moved in, they couldn't up your rent?
Well, they can only up it by a certain percentage. It's not rent controlled. I think we have somebody in the building paying $175 a month. So
do not.
Girl, that's like one of those where the landlord walks by and it's like, die already.
Yeah. And that person's been here 20 years plus,
yeah.
right?
And by the way, she's spry as hell. Good for her.
She's not dying anytime soon.
Keep it moving, ladybug. Good for you. And I'm jealous and go. So I saw it and I was like, and I just had this weird feeling and I was like, this is it. This is it. I'm doing it. And the guy who I almost married was walking around with me because, of course, I was like, I don't know. What if it's like some weirdo, So he was like, God, you always do this. You can't just take the first thing you see. There might be something better out there. And I go, okay, fine. I looked at the landlord. I said, don't give it up. And he goes, okay. And I said, don't give it up. Wait, I got one more place to see. I went to the other place. I went, yep, nope, that's it. Called him up as I'm doing it. And I've been here for like 14 years.
14 years. Wow.
I mean, it's a 1-bedroom Soho, rent stabilized. What are you going to do?
It's a great place, though.
But it's also like, when you walk into a place and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be here. Like, there's a ghost in the apartment. And,
does he or she come out often?
I don't know what it is, comes out in weird ways. Like, it will take your keys. And it's really bizarre. People think I'm crazy, but it's happened even to the most non-believers. And, you're just like, I know I put my keys here. This apartment is clean as hell. Well, not today, but, normally.
I think it's pretty clean, yeah.
Oh, you haven't seen the bedroom? I shoved it all in there like a 5-year-old under the bed. And I'll be like, I know I put my keys here. And you have to go into another room, shut the door and say, could I please get my keys back? I appreciate it. And you come back and your keys are there.
Oh, that's weird.
Or weird stuff like that, but it's not like but you can feel it's a good presence.
Do you know who it is?
No, this is an old tenement building. So basically these 3 rooms of my apartment probably house 20 people in each room. So at one point.
Could be a combination, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So who the heck knows? But it's nice. And what's even nicer is, people have been in the building a real long time. And they've been on the block a real long time. It's not the part of Soho where it's all been bought out. So it's just a community and people know each other and they're just lovely. I mean, people watch my dog for free for months on end. It's crazy.
Like your neighbors in the building?
Neighbors down the street. I do have neighbors in the building who would, but, like there's one neighbor a couple doors down and she's got 2 dogs. And if Carl, my dog, is just getting too bored, I'll be like, hold up.
You're adorable dog, by the way.
Oh, he is pretty amazing. I had to cut his online presence. He was getting people showing up who just wanted to meet him. I was like, it's weird, dude.
I'll have to take a little picture and post it in the show notes for you. Yeah, he's adorable.
He's literally half cat.
Yeah, I know. I like dogs like that, though, that are half cat.
Oh, dude, whenever somebody's like, I'm getting a dog in New York City, for example, because in the rest of the country, it's a lot different. I'm like, yeah, you go get a big dog with that big turd. You do it, But like in New York, I'm like, okay, unless you're insanely wealthy, and even if you are, you don't want a necessarily big dog because they're going to shed and ruin your gazillion-dollar furniture. I'm like, number 1, you got to think about the size of the turds. And number 2, you got to think about the energy level.
And the size of your apartment and how much an apartment can take.
And, I look at people, I'm like, if you don't get a dog with your exact same energy level, you're going to be miserable.
How long have you had Carl?
Carl is 14.
Oh, so when you moved into the apartment?
Right before. No, I got Carl when he was about 5 months old.
For a 14-year-old, he's still really spry.
Oh, heck yeah. Carl eats better than most like health
Most people.
food writers. He's got
funny.
like chia seeds and flax seeds and
Oh, no
like
wonder.
fish oil / whatever.
It does a dog good.
Oh, let me tell you.
He's doing well. Awesome. So great neighborhood here. So it's a nice landing spot for when you come back from your travels.
Oh, totally. I wouldn't be able to do what I did at all without this neighborhood.
Well, first, let me ask you this. No, I'm not even going to ask you. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to monopolize time right now.
Please
because
do.
I want people to know. I don't even know if I ever shared this story with you, but the first time we met.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I'm nervous.
No. Oh, no. This is such a great story. I tell this story to so many people. So we were in D.C. for an event that travel bloggers were
Oh, my God. It was a White House event.
It was the White House event. So for that White House event, we got invited, a little backstory for listeners. We got invited to this event where they're trying to do a study abroad, trying to promote study abroad across the country. And I thought, and we were invited to the White House and it was Christmas time. And I thought this was really cool. So I thought, yeah, sure, I'll go. So they were very clear. You must wear business attire. It's all a proper affair and everything. Well, shit, I don't have business attire. I work from home. I travel. I lead tours. I don't have business attire. So I had to go out and buy something. And I was very resentful of that. Not because of the money per se, but because I had to go out and actually buy a pair of slacks and a jacket that I would never wear again. And for the record, I have never worn them again since that, but they're still in my closet in case I get invited to the White House again, which I would do things differently anyway. So we're in line and for the White House event, and we go inside, and there's this person in front of me, if memory serves me correctly, in jeans and kitty cat shoes and a t-shirt or some kind of funky thing. And I just thought, oh, this person is not with this group that got this is just some errant person off the street who's come in for this White House tour. She's definitely not with our group because it was very clear that we had to wear business attire. And then you asked me to take your photo, I think, in front of one of the trees. And then, don't you know it, it's you. And you are speaking at the event. And I thought...
Well, I did change into a suit for the event, although, and it was a silk costume national suit, I might add. Although I did wear a Nobody Put Cincy in the Corner t-shirt because I was hometown proud, Cincinnati, Ohio, underneath the suit. And they still call me the girl who wore a t-shirt to the White House. And I go, it was under a silk suit. Come on. Not to mention, I was like, I've always thought, well, first of all, I look cute as shit in those jeans and those kitty cat shoes.
It was awesome. But the thing behind that for me was, don't let somebody else tell you what to wear or who to be. And that's what I went to that event feeling so uncomfortable in my own skin because I wasn't wearing what I was comfortable in. And I just thought it was so cool that you just came as you are. And I'll never forget that. And I just thought that was, in the theme of the podcast, very bold. And I just had so much respect for you having made that decision. I thought that was really cool.
Well, also, let me just point out that it was a White House tour, and it was a tour that everyone else in the universe was doing. And I knew that I had to wear a suit for the event, right? But I was also a little tweaked about that event in general. I'll tell you why in a second. But I've always also thought, you know what? As long as you have good posture and look people in the eye, you can get away with most anything. And, I certainly wasn't going to show up disrespectfully in ripped jeans. These were nice jeans. And it was a White House tour. It wasn't like we were meeting anybody. It was, along with everyone else. So I knew what I could get away with. And I also knew it was going to be a long day. And I also knew that I had to go speak at that event after. So I was like, no, I'm not wearing heels. I can't. I'm not doing this. And, I know what I look good in. So did that and then switched up for the event. But what annoyed me about the event beyond was it was a study abroad, and we've got to get people how to study abroad and be global citizens and blah, blah, blah. And what most people don't know about me, I've spent a lot of my life being a semi-chameleon because that's just how you survive.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I'll tell you. I mean, what a lot of people don't know is that I grew up with not a lot of money. So I grew up in a 3-room house, and that included the bathroom. The street that I grew up on was featured in the Policewomen of Cincinnati, that short-lived but amazing show. There was a prostitution and drug bust on the street that I grew up in. I called my mom and I went, Mom, oh my God, And she was like, I always told you never go to the bottom of the hill. And I was like, oh, shit, you're right. Mom was right again. So anyway, it's one of those things where, and I was annoyed because, everyone was standing up before they spoke and they're like, hi, I'm Bob. Florence, 1999. And, that was the year where they went on summer, study abroad. And it was almost all Europe as well. And then Sheila would stand up and she was like, Paris, 2004. And then somebody else would stand up and they're like, Rome, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I get it. And then they get to me and I go, nothing, because I was too broke. And they were like, and I said, and I made the point during the thing. I said, here's the problem with this. And I go, you guys are preaching to the choir. I go, and also looking out in the crowd, I go, you've already got 100% of the rich white people you're going to get. You've also got, take out the white of the rich people who can afford it. I go, the problem with study abroad, and we can talk circles around it all you want, is that not only is it not affordable in general, the credits don't transfer. So only 4% of schools take abroad credits. So if somebody's on a scholarship like I was, you're not going to be able to do it. Beyond the fact that you can't afford the plane ticket, beyond the fact that you can't afford the books or the rent or the whatever. And they're all looking at me going, that's yes. And I was like, this is all just lip service. So I get really annoyed when things are lip service. And also looking out onto that crowd, I think there was one black person and one Latino. And the Latino guy they kept pointing out is the guy who got a scholarship to go abroad as the one guy. And I was like, you guys, this is really kind of okay.
You're the only person I know that has said anything. Maybe I ignored anything else that came out about that, but I was so angry at that event as well. I just my head wanted to explode because I saw that same thing because I was in that same boat. I did not have money growing up. I went to a small university in Pennsylvania that didn't cost a lot of money and did not have opportunities. And when I saw the people in that room and the same thing of like, Sheila, I went to Paris and, I thought, oh my God, these people are really out of touch.
Oh, beyond. It reminded me of the girl that I went to college with who came back and she was, she had a brand new car. And I went to a college that was, I graduated in 95. And at the time it was $27,000 a year. So it was Emory University. I got a full ride, yay. But the majority of people were very wealthy. And she came back and she and I weren't real close friends. We were just more acquaintances. And she was one of those annoying people who's like, hey, everybody, I have an idea. Let's all go get tapas for dinner. And you
get what?
Get tapas.
Oh, tapas
for dinner. And you're like, what? And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I just got back from a trip to España.
Oh, God.
Where they lisp a bit. And I guess it's just because, and I was like, girl, you need to calm it down. You were there for a month and a half. Like, but it was really just like, I get it. I get it. You went on study abroad. Yay for you. Bye-bye. So, and it was just like, all right, and it's just this disconnect. And I think, going into the last election, I just remembered that disconnect because it was a group set up by the White House. And, funnily enough, so I was on stage with a guy from the State Department next to me. And at first he was annoyed by me. By the end of it, he looks at me and he goes, that was really good. Thank you. And I was like, all right. And I've actually stayed in contact with all the people who organized it.
Oh, yeah.
So that is funny. I did meet a lot of great people out of that, including you from that event. So it was good.
Yeah. You were memorable for me. So yeah, I'm delighted. That was a great thing that came from that. For sure.
I have a hard time not speaking my mind, which is a blessing and a curse.
Oh, no, it's great. Oh, big picture. It's a big blessing. So great. Anyway, I wanted to go back and just acknowledge where we had met because I think that's such a fun story that I repeat to a lot of people too. And it was just a huge lesson for me. It was really great. So anyway, let's go back.
Girl, just always remember, if you got good posture, you can get away with most anything.
Yeah, that is a good one. And look people in the eye.
Well, at least in the States. In a lot of cultures, you shouldn't look people in the eye. But
yep.
Good posture opens a lot of doors.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Good. Okay. My takeaway for today.
Yeah.
So you grew up in Cincinnati, not a lot of money. What drew you to travel and what was your first trip that you took?
Well, my parents had always been travelers. So I was actually born in England and we lived briefly in Saudi Arabia before ending up in Cincinnati.
Oh, wow. Do you remember the time there? Like,
I
okay.
was like
So you're very
2.
young. Okay.
Yeah. And you know what it was? It was always books and it was always stories. And, you know, we read a lot. My mother was a teacher, so there were constant books. Like we never read or saw Disney. We would have the Italo Calvino fairy tales. And it was always just like, ooh, or Arabian Nights. And you just make these places exist. What's this about? Or I was very lucky to go. Cincinnati is a unique place. It had magnet schools long before people knew what magnet schools were. So we always went to elevated schools. In my high school was one you had to have a test to get into. But in my grade school, you know, I would just finish my work early and I'd go to the back of the room, the reading area, it was 3rd grade, and just sit there and look at a huge world map and then look up the places on the map. Because it was just all these places that I had heard about in books even then.
Because of your parents or your mom.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Totally. And it was just, oh, what about this? And it's really an imagination. Also, let's be honest, Cincinnati, I was, you know, it's taken me a long time to appreciate Cincinnati. And when you're growing up, you're like, anywhere but here.
Yeah, you wanted to bust out.
Totally. Also because of these stories of how my parents met in England and here's this and wow.
And you have 3 sisters, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And did they have that same?
No. Well, I have 3 sisters. So one is from my mom. So I have one full sister and 2 half sisters.
Did they have the same love or the same experience that you had about wanting to travel?
My older sister, definitely. She didn't as much, though, because we didn't have a lot of money. We were also raised to be doctors and lawyers. So she became the lawyer. She was the good girl.
Why did you rebel against that?
Well, I could never really handle this blood and guts. So I knew doctor wasn't going to happen. And then in college, I had my advisor. I think NYU had just come out with their program of if you do 10 years of public service, you get law school for free. And I told him, I said, oh my God, look, I figured out a way to afford law school. And he goes, oh, Jesus, Paula, no. And I go, what do you mean? And he goes, you want to be a lawyer? And I go, yeah. And he goes, no, just don't. And I go, well, I'm going to be. And he goes, here's the deal, Paula.
So you would show up in your jeans and your kitty cat shoes in the courtroom.
It would have been a nightmare. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, here's the deal, Paula. You'd be a great lawyer. You really would. I go, that's right. And he goes, but you would be miserable from what I know of you. And he goes, and please trust me when I tell you, 99% of lawyers I know are miserable. And I go, and I went back and I was like, oh God, what options are left? And I literally had like a nervous breakdown for about a week and a half. And then I was like, okay, we'll just keep it moving. And then I was like, journalism, you can travel and get paid.
And there you go.
Totally. So I moved to London after college and worked for The Guardian.
How long were you there?
About 2 years. And I respect the fact that you live in Seattle, but I could never be that wet or damp again.
Right, because that's it's very similar to London.
Oh God, it was my true seventh circle of Dante in hell. So afterwards, I spent 6 months in India. I had $1,500.
You could have a year in India
in 1997. Yeah, totally. So I had to travel till the money ran out because it's funny. My mother has always said, I'll give you a plane ticket home so you'll never be homeless, but I'll never give you a red cent otherwise. And I was like, oh my God. I tell people that and they just assume I grew up wealthy. I'm like, ha, joke's on you. She would have mortgaged the house. In fact, she told me once because I had needed $50 for rent and she goes, go to Gatwick. And I go, you have to mortgage the house for a last minute ticket. She goes, worth every penny. I was like, all right, let me call you back. I got another job. So anyway, I spent 6 months in India with my best friend from college and then came and moved to New York literally for public transportation.
Do you have a driver's license?
Yeah. Oh, heck yeah.
Most people don't have cars here, assuming you don't have a car, and it is so great for public transportation.
I moved here because I couldn't afford a car. Yeah. I'd run out of all my money. And so I was like, oh God, if I don't, the majority of my career has been, oh God, I don't want to end up back in Cincinnati. So, what was I going to do?
Right. So The Guardian traveled to India, back to New York, and then
I had never been to New York. So to New York. Uh-huh. Then I worked as a temp at a tax and legal publishing firm while working for the Queen's Gazette for free at night. Then got a job doing covering interest rate swaps and over-the-counter derivatives for institutional investor, and then at Dow Jones/Wall Street Journal. Then I met someone who knew someone, and I became the deputy editor for this thing called Page Six, which is a huge gossip column in the New York Post. I was there for 10 years.
Wow.
And
did you like that?
I did until I didn't. You know, I mean, you have to understand, like, I was exceptionally good at my job because my mother is an exceptional person, and I was always raised with the edict of we all shit in the same pot and we all die. So, you know, it helped me when dealing with celebrities or society.
You weren't holding them on a higher pedestal. You were
no.
You were just treating them as people.
Yeah, it was all, you know, it's just like, well, here's my job. Here we go.
How'd you get into the travel industry then?
Again, it's all been kind of accidental.
Were you traveling during the years that you were at Page Six?
Well, yeah, but it was to like LA. So I quit. I wrote about it in that book. So I've written a couple books along the way. The first book was How to Be Famous. Basically, it was 9 Secrets of the Rich and Famous.
And how did that work for you?
Oh God,
did you become rich and famous?
Honey, it was I was famous for a little bit. It was supposed to be a magazine article, and then my editor got fired, so I sold it as a book and paid off my college loan and bought my mother's house. That was back when you could still get money for books. So, and then the second book came out in 2009, and it was a novel, Mercury in retrograde. I literally wrote it to get out of my job because I was just miserable. It was Groundhog Day. You become cynical. And yeah, I wrote about that whole period in a book called The 10 Habits for Highly Successful Women. And it was really the first time I think a woman had written about blowing up her life. And I did. And it was a chapter called Controlled Burn, and about how deeply unhappy I was and how I purposefully blew up my life, burned it down to try to rebuild. So
let me just make sure that I've got the threads right here. So what you did was you wrote Mercury in retrograde.
In 2009. I wrote that. Actually, I wrote it in 2007. I became deeply unhappy. 2006, 2007, 2008. 2007, I realized I'm going to have an exit for several reasons, which I deal with in the chapter, but there was a lot of other things going on with the job. And I'm going to have an exit where no one can say anything about my exit.
You have to do something big enough where it makes sense. So you wrote the book. But that's what you're considering kind of, you burned it down when you wrote the book, quit your job, and then you wrote about that controlled burn.
I burned it down when I literally said, I'm done. And I looked at people and I just said, I'm done. And I stopped going to events every night. I have articles written about how I was a socialite and all this stuff. And I was like, that's not me. I'm done. Just cutting it off. I became someone I didn't recognize. And I remember sitting there and there was a period I called hiding. And there was hiding and there was hiding light. On bad day, good days, hiding light was not getting out of bed and staying under the covers. Hiding was getting in my closet and shutting the door and not opening the door. If I had not had Carl, I literally would not have left the apartment. I might have gotten the Depends and not even left the closet. And finally, I dragged myself out and I was like, girl, you used to be cool. You used to be someone who was rocking. When was the last time you remember really feeling intrepid and rocking and did something that you proved how awesome you were? And I was like, India. Okay. And I was like, you've always wanted to go to Africa.
And that was what, 10 years prior or so?
Totally. And I was like, all right, you've always wanted to go to Africa. You might be in a job soon. Big joke. I wasn't. You might be in a job soon. Go do Africa. So I went to Kenya. And I went there for 2 weeks on my own. And that was, back in the days when people didn't really travel on their own in 2009, especially to Africa or to Kenya or whatever. And I was like, oh, and I started to really just kind of get it. I started to be like, okay, there's your spark, girl. There's your spark. And then I used I said, you wanted to get into journalism because you could travel. And I do have many talents, and one of my talents is I know a good story. So I called upon some editors I knew, and I started working for Playboy and Newsweek, and I would be like, oh, look at this. This is a messed up story. There's this bus tour of Iraq, and there's a war going on, and we've spent $2 billion in tourism for, and it was a hilarious story. It hit the cover of Playboy and was picked up everywhere, and then I was like, oh, wait, there's this interesting trip up the Niger to Timbuktu. There's and so I started doing interesting stories around the world and putting them into people. It wasn't travel per se. So it wasn't actual travel like what people think of as travel, like here's this great island, or here's this place to stay and you'll love eating here. It wasn't that at all. It was literally like, oh, here's this kind of messed up thing, and it's really showing you the dichotomy of life and the dichotomy of perhaps the U.S. government position or what we think as to what actually is going on.
Was that around the time, or maybe it was actually before the time that I think both Tony Wheeler and Rick Steves came out and started writing about traveling to like the worst places on the planet as outlined by Bush. Do you recall that? I'm blanking on the name, but
I don't remember when it came out. I remember hearing about it. I didn't read about it. My whole thing was it's still all a takeoff of PJ O'Rourke's Holidays in Hell.
Oh, absolutely.
Which is literally one of the best. And I was like, that to me was my rubric. I was like, well, let's just redo this. This is hilarious. He's absolutely right. Yeah. Before PJ went crazy, right-wing nutbag. So that's what I was, looking at. And I was like, this is a really good idea. Let's redo it. And also at the time I was frustrated because there was nothing, they weren't really allowing women to do it. And by that, the women's magazines would look at me and say, women need a journey. That's what women want, a journey. Like Eat, Pray, Love. And I'm like, oh, for Christ's sake. So for me, people, Eat, Pray, Love just struck me as all sorts of false. And also knowing that she had the book deal before she went out to do it. Also knowing, I was just like, well, this is just struck me as false. I'm glad that it helped people, and I'm glad that some people got something out of it.
Well, we can talk about that too. I don't know if you're being kind because you're not sure about my response about that, but I have my issues with the book myself. And I'm
not being kind because of you. Okay. I'm being kind because on that level, even though I guess saying that something strikes you as false is not necessarily kind, but because I do think that it did help people in a way, and so therefore I don't, just for me, I have a sick need to try to be honest with myself. And even I have gone through phases where I am not honest with myself. And then a year later, I'll be like, oh, hold up, girlfriend. This is why you got that weird pit in your stomach. I really value honesty, and I value just authenticity in a way where most things that are marketed as authentic are not, because it's a marketing ploy to do XYZ.
And you were in that world for a long time. So
absolutely.
You can spot it.
I mean, I wrote a book basically about how to get famous. For Christ's sake, I get it.
Yeah. Well, I do want to, because I know so many listeners, if not every listener to this, will have read Eat, Pray, Love. I want to talk about that for just a second, because I had my problems with it. I read the whole book.
Oh, well, good for you, because, girl, I couldn't get through it.
I didn't see the movie. I'll say that. But I didn't, because I'm not a Julia Roberts fan. But I read the whole book. But in reading that, I just thought, like in the very beginning, her face is on the floor. She's throwing up in the toilet because she's going through this divorce. And all I could think of was, get over it. We all go through that. Like, so what is the big deal? It's very dramatic. And I said that to a friend of mine, and she said, exactly, Beth. We all go through it. Everyone can relate to it, and that's why it was so popular. So I got it. And like you said, a lot of people were helped by it, or they were inspired by it, or whatever you want to say. But I just felt like there was way too much drama around it.
Well, I know a lot of dramatic New York media people, and I may even be considered one of them. So I will say that didn't bother me so much. I mean, considering I just told you I literally spent 3 months in my closet or under my sheets hiding and not coming out. I get it. And I also get deep, dark depression. I get it. And I also get, like I said, literally looking and being like, I need to hit the reset. I need to hit this. I used to be someone awesome that I actually liked. So I get that point of it. For me, it just struck me. And I guess that's also why I think, I'm glad that it gave women permission to say, oh, hold up, because I do think what's happened over the years is that I call it the American gap year, and it's usually the American female gap year, where the rest of the world takes their gap year in between high school and college, or college and life, and then they also take a little bit of time off during life. Americans don't do that, and I think this is also why you've seen the rise of such major female travel numbers, is that, women are also raised to be the good girl. You do what you're told, and you really try to exceed at it, and you try to make it ameliorate everything, and you go to high school, and then you go to college, or you go straight to work, but you keep it moving, and then you get married, and then you have your kids, and then you hit a certain age, and you don't know who the hell you are. You're in a job that you're in because you were told that's what you were supposed to do, and you're married to a dude you don't know. You're working your ass off for these kids who may not be awesome. They're awesome, but 80% of the time you're like, I might want to throttle you, and then you're just like, who the hell am I? And when the kids finally leave for school and you got a minute, that's when a lot of the divorces happen.
Absolutely.
And that's when
empty nesters. Mm-hmm.
Totally. And so the American gap year is usually followed by something traumatic, or prompted by something traumatic: loss of a job, loss of a marriage, loss of the children in the house, something like that, where they're just like, wait, what? So then that's when the women start giving themselves permission to say, oh, hold up. It's also why you see women, have only a 40% remarriage rate, as opposed to men who have a 60% remarriage rate. And those numbers fall off dramatically after 5 years. Whereas women are like, I don't need to get remarried again. Nope, did that, done that. We're all good. We can live together if you want. But nope, this is mine. I worked for it. We're good. And it's also just kind of, you see certain things. So for those reasons, I say, good for you. This resonated. And I understand why it resonated. It was a minute.
So do you think that you went through something similar to that when you left your job and you said, I'm not the person that has that spark? Where is that person? You kind of went, I'm hesitating to call it a midlife crisis because I don't necessarily believe in that.
Oh, girl,
I just think
no. Here's the deal. It was definitely an identity crisis. And it was definitely like, oh my God, I just stumbled into something and it became successful. And oh my Lord. And the thing about travel was, for me, so I also, sometimes we have issues with our parents and all that lovely stuff. And I just really started going to therapy and dealing with it. And I had one therapist for a couple of years who helped me really understand what went on in my past. And then I had one therapist that helped me learn new grooves for the future. And then what I found for travel was it helped me, and specifically solo travel. And I should say that I consider solo travel also small group travel where you don't know anyone. It's still you getting off your butt and going out there into a situation where you don't know someone. So for me, it really helped because I could try on these new behaviors or these new things I was learning in non-judgmental areas and ways. And not that they're not judgmental, but the thing is that I would say, if you travel with someone on a tangential level, and not even sometimes on a deeper level, we think we know each other, right? Oh, well, that's just not how Beth isn't going to like this. Oh, where's Beth? I think she might be having, hold on. So it's stress on me to constantly worry about Beth, but it's also stress on you to be like, hey, I'm trying out something. Nope, I don't want to let that bother me. No, I'm trying not to let no coffee before 10 bother me. Hold up one moment. And for me, it was a way to try on new hats that I was learning how to wear.
In that travel, while you were traveling, you were learning who you were.
Learning who I was, how to tweak certain behaviors so that I could be happier in general. We go with what we're comfortable with, and what we're comfortable with is what we're raised with. And there are some things. So
what did you learn about your family and your upbringing that you thought, and I'm totally putting words in your mouth, that maybe this isn't appropriate or normal, or it is something that I can change about myself? This was learned behavior, but when I go out into the real world, or I go out and I travel, that I can change that behavior because other people don't respond or react that way.
It is kind of funny. So I was raised by what I like to call two catastrophists. They're not pessimists. I mean, they make Chicken Little look like a sad little moon-eyed optimist. So it's like, oh my God, you're going to die. Everything's dying, and I mean, my mother is hilarious. I mean, and granted, I get it. She was a single woman from New York City in Ohio who had working 4 jobs, trying to keep 2 kids alive. I got it.
Prior to marrying your stepdad, is that?
No, my dad got remarried. My mother never got remarried.
Okay.
My father got remarried.
They divorced. How old were you?
I was like 2. She left him while we were in Saudi Arabia.
I see. Okay. So very young. So your relationship primarily is with your mom growing up. Okay.
And so, and here's this, I mean, I remember the rules of Anne. They're amazing. Like you're 5 years old and she'd be like, girls, come here. Look at that van. That van has no windows. Why does it have no windows? There's no need for a van to not have windows unless you're a murderer or a rapist. Don't go near a van that doesn't have windows. Someone could be in there right now.
Wow.
We don't know. And you're like, ah! I mean, literally, it took me until I was like 25 to walk down a street, and not cross it for a van with no windows.
How did you end up such a bold badass with so much fear?
It was hilarious, and she'd be like, girls, come here. If there's a man in a raincoat, he's probably a flasher, and he's going to show you his penis. You need to run away and call the cops. Never go by a man with a raincoat. And you're like, okay, or
Paula, I don't know how you dismantled all that or ignored it or whatever.
Oh, it was hilarious. It was actually because you actually had to get a sense of humor or end up in your mother's basement for the rest of your life. So it was also one of those things where it's like, I grew up with, there's almost no in between. It's either black or white. There's no shades of gray. God, I hate that book that took the title of that. But, it's definitely, all right, well, how bad is it out there? All right, well, is everything really going to kill me? Hold on. What's this?
How old were you when you figured that out?
Well, I went to, I guess I moved to London when I was 21 on my own. And
there's a lot of men with raincoats there.
A lot of men with raincoats.
You were running away at every street corner.
No, I think at that point, I mean, come on, it was the 80s. John Hughes films were everywhere. You're immune to pervs. Like pervs didn't bother me. I was like, oh, you put a sack on it.
So you went to London, but you somehow didn't bring all that fear with you.
Oh, no, there was still fear, but it was still like, all right, try it, whatever. I guess it was just kind of like, there I was, hiding in my closet thinking used to be cool, used to be pretty brave, go back out there. And so I went back out there and I went to weird places. And you know what? I went to some really extremely weird places like Iraq or Afghanistan or Mali or, you name it, anywhere in the Middle East because people think the Middle East is weird. I certainly don't. Or Colombia before it was Colombia.
When it was dangerous. Yeah. So the time that you were under the blanket and in the closet, were you still working at Page Six at that point?
No,
or
girl.
You had left?
I was unemployed.
Okay. And so then you went under.
Burning through savings. Yep.
Got it. And then you kicked yourself in the butt and said, I need to get out and go do something and go travel.
Yeah. I mean, the good thing about my depression is I've almost always gotten annoyed with myself. And so through that, been able to drag my ass out and been like, hold up. And through my annoyance, I come up with some ideas. And, there we go. That's a little shiny light in the tunnel. Let's follow that one. But it was, so through travel, I also started learning how to behave better. I was on a 3.5-week boat up the Niger River with a group of 6 people I did not know. And there was one woman who just rang my last nerve. I mean, we are just talking, whoop. And a week into it, I snapped at her and the entire group looked at me and shushed me. And my immediate reaction was like, well, fuck you. I know y'all are thinking it. Blah, 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 blah. And then I thought, oh, God, no, they're right. Had they not, and had I been allowed to be, I don't know, I guess the Bethany Frankel of the trip, it would have changed the entire dynamics for everyone. It would have been a horrific, bad disaster trip. And because they literally cut me off, and I spent 5 minutes being pissed, and then 10 minutes later, I was like, they were right. And then I made it my business. I sat down next to the woman and we ended up becoming friendly. And I actually learned a lot from her.
Did you say anything publicly?
Nope.
Okay.
You just kept it moving.
Okay. I would behave the same way as you. I might say something, realize later that it was a mistake, and then move on.
Oh, but girl, I needed the group to tell me it was a mistake because I think they saw in my eyes.
Well, that's what I mean.
I was about to go on a bling, 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 bling rant.
Well, in whatever way it comes out. But I have observed, because I'm a bit sheltered myself because I work from home. So I'm not in a work environment where I can observe a lot of behavior. But there are times when I observe someone and I say, oh, wow, she just made a public apology to someone. I would never have done that. I would have either done it quietly or I would have just glossed over it and made some kind of a handshake or just some kind of a way to bridge it. But so that's why I was curious.
It wasn't a remark that I think merited a public apology. It was a snappy retort that I think people understood was about to go down the road of something that would merit an apology.
Mm-hmm. So they caught you before.
Girl, I got shushed like a 5-year-old. And I was like, oh, you're right. Okay. But that trip particularly taught me group dynamics, but it also, so you have to understand, when I was at Page Six, I was also on air for Entertainment Tonight and The Insider and all these TV shows. I spoke in sassy little sound bites, right? And that's what I had been really elevated for, being quick and smart and sassy and telling it like it is. And, that trip really taught me, just because you see it some way isn't the way that it is. And it also taught me to, if somebody annoys you, you need to double down and make an effort to get to know them, because usually what annoys you about them is usually something within yourself that you find annoying. And she was actually an insanely fascinating woman, and we became friendly, and I was really like, well, ain't that a kick in the pants for me? So that was a real important thing. And then, it's just learning how to keep your mouth shut, or learning how to be gracious, and learning how it's not really about you. And it was teaching me certain things or reteaching me things that I had forgotten through my situation or through just my own narcissism.
So you started traveling, and then you started writing about travel and actually making money?
Well, no. So I don't hate it. I shouldn't say it that way. It's I was doing journalism, as in I was going and finding news stories that just didn't happen to be in New York.
Fair enough.
So when people are like writing about travel and how to make a living off of writing about travel, I'm like, girl, don't believe any of those liars.
That it's possible to make money as a travel writer. Is that what you're saying? It is
possible, but listen, I can also find a leprechaun in a pot of gold or win the lottery. I got it. The other thing is that unless you have a goal or an aim in mind, I found out a long time ago, it is real difficult to put your stuff in a backpack and, as an intellectually curious person, not have something to do. Because it's like the first time I went to India for 6 months, right? I go with my best friend. We're in Jaisalmer, this little town in the west of India, right by Pakistan. And we run into this guy, and there's a bunch of people that you know as the competitive professional travelers, right? The people who are like, I only spent $5. Like, $5? I spent $4.50 today. Boom. And like, whatever. And we were outside the Raj's palace that he had just moved out of. And unlike in the rest of the world, in India, you can go into these palaces and touch the walls. You can sit in the chairs. I mean, oh my God, it's not like a museum where it's all walled off. I was my first experience. This is so cool. Berg. So excited. And we go outside and we order a pot of specialty wink, which is really just warm beer in a teapot. And we're drinking it. And there's this guy, and he's just sitting there looking bored. He was British. And we're like, oh my God, are you going to go inside? It's so amazing. He goes, you've seen one palace, you've seen them all, mate. And we're all like, oh my God. And Emily and I we were so appalled. We were like, Jesus Christ, what is that guy even doing? He needs to go home. Like, why would you, he had been on the road for like a year. He was one of the, we're like, he needs to just go home. Why is he even here? Cut to 5 months later, we're in Rishikesh, and somebody's like, are you going to go to the temple where the Beatles, blah, blah, blah? We're like, oh, seen one temple, you've seen them all.
This was you?
Yeah. And we looked at each other and we're like, we need to go home. We're just about done.
A little burnt out, yeah.
Totally burnt out, because it does become redundant. It's hard you're like, wait, what? And you become cynical and a little bit of like you're running away from life instead of actually just heading towards it. So anyway, getting back to the way that I did it was different. I did it with news stories. So every trip had an objective, and it was paid for, or I paid for it and then sold it after. And then I started a blog called Abroad. Abroad. Same word.
Yeah.
Homophone. And I was like, oh God, all this travel stuff. It's all written by white guys or rich people. And nobody's having fun with it. Travel should be fun. Like, look at this weird dichotomy out there.
What year did you launch that?
Well, I launched it in its first iteration, like 2011, but I relaunched it in 2014. And for some reason, that's when it really went crazy. I got like 50,000 freaking uniques in 3 weeks. And then Yahoo, a friend of mine was like, oh, you should meet these people at Yahoo. They're relaunching Yahoo Travel. Then I became the EIC of Yahoo Travel.
What's the EIC?
Editor-in-chief. And then went and they let me recreate it, which was cool. You know, I did start the whole on a mass scale, because there were obviously people writing about it before, the whole solo female travel thing, the whole really adventure, the whole on a mass scale for a mass audience. And it really took off. And then the next thing you know, BBC Travel is redesigning and everything, you know, and you're like, oh, look, they're doing our stories. That's cool.
What happened with that? Did Yahoo Travel, you're no longer with Yahoo Travel.
Oh, girl, it's not around.
Yeah, that's what
everything blew up in 2016.
Okay.
Which, I mean, it was fine. I was frankly ready for it too.
Well, when you say everything blew up, do you mean Yahoo Travel or do you mean everything travel related, like the BBC?
Yahoo shut everything down.
Okay.
Yahoo had these huge expansion plans. They shut everything down and then went to sale.
They just weren't profitable in that arena.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of things written about it. Yahoo Travel is actually profitable. We were bringing in around anywhere from 300 to 550,000 a month. So we were profitable, but they had 15 other magazines. So it doesn't matter if one, and we weren't like bringing in millions a month. So it's one of those. But I mean, I was ready for it. I'd given myself a solo female travel show because I've been trying to get one of these going for years and had heard from every single network and cable station, women can't do a show alone. They need someone to bounce off of. Or, you know what women like? Women like beaches. Or women like getting married. Or, you know, that's just not our audience. And so I gave myself a show and we got great numbers. And it was like 5 to 7 minutes long per episode, which is huge for online. What was it called? Abroad.
Okay.
And we were getting 750 to $1 million average a week. And people were still saying, yeah, but that we don't know, you know, and you're like, you're using all these excuses to not pick this up. And when I look at it and I look and see you only have men on your air. And at some point you just go, I got it. I know what you think of me. And by me, I mean, I know what you think of women.
Yeah. I had Samantha Brown on the podcast as well earlier this year, as a matter of fact. And she's just as you're being very, well, I think you're telling it a little bit more. I don't want to say honestly, but you're expanding on the issue a little bit more than she is. But I think that's probably what she found is that in the Travel Channel world, it was Andrew Zimmern.
And by the way, I don't want to just say Travel Channel and also I will say I'm hopeful they're under new management again. But you look at, there's history, Discovery,
food.
Food has some women. But history, Discovery, A&E, AMC, all of these channels or Sci-Fi, all these channels that do have some sort of CNN docuseries, all these places that do some cool, interesting stuff, or could do Nat Geo. There are no women on them. Well, no, sorry. Nat Geo has Katie Couric, but that's just recently, and she ain't doing this kind of stuff. They give that stuff to the men to do. So, and you're just like, okay. And it's really frustrating too, because, you know, if you look at the numbers, the average adventure traveler is a 47-year-old woman who wears a size 12.
I don't get it.
So, and, you know, women who traveled with children spent $271 million a year last year. Women who traveled alone spent $471 million. So you just kind of go, hey, hold up. You know, and they're not looking at the numbers because they're really just feeding their own gut, which is clearly off because look at their numbers on the shows.
Right. Well, look who's running it as well. But yeah, so that's what Samantha is doing. She's launched her own thing on PBS.
Well, she said, and the thing about PBS has found a lot of success with women. The issue with PBS is you have to have sponsors to back you. In order to get on PBS, it costs $250,000 a year. And that's not production charges. So you have to basically have a sponsor who's like, yeah, I believe in you. I believe that this is going to happen. And we're going to give you $400,000 to $500,000 to be able to do this. which, by the way, sounds like a lot of money, but for advertisers,
Not
it's
for
actually
right.
not, but it's still a budgetary concern. And then you look at people like Red Bull, who they don't believe in women at all, or the turtleneck pillow, which I really like, and they're investing in video and it's all dudes. And you're just like, oh, come on, man. So anyway, that's been the frustration. So again, like Samantha, it's like, all right, I'll go do it myself, and I'm working on, I've got the travel essay book and that I'm working on, and it does incorporate my family and how I got to it and what I learned through each trip and some of the crazy stuff that's happened along the way. And it is kind of, it's like, I think there's a chapter in there, like how to travel anywhere and not get killed or maimed. Another one is how to not accidentally look like a hooker in a wreck. Or
yeah.
Oh, there's another chapter. All white people look the same.
Well, when do you expect it to come out? Do you know?
I'm hoping to sell it by the end of the summer.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So you're far along, or you're just really dedicated to the writing process?
Dedicated to the writing process.
Okay.
And also I've had a couple other books. So I'm hoping to sell it on spec with a couple chapters.
Got it. Oh, okay. I see. So not necessarily published by the end of the summer. But...
No, girl, no. Sell it.
Okay, got it.
As you know, from selling to publishing, it's usually a year or two.
Yeah. Well, I've been working on my book for years, and I keep saying I've just stopped talking about it because it's just so difficult for me to sit down and dedicate time to it. So what I'm doing is, we talked about before we started recording, I'm pulling back a little bit so that I can regroup and spend my time working on the book, because I just need that dedicated time to spend on it, because I think that there's value in it. And just being able to reach the audience, I think, is really important.
Yeah. And it's also, what I want to do with this book is really just show the cultures and the different, it's so funny because the internet was supposed to bring us all together, and it's actually made us much more xenophobic and tribalistic in general, which I attribute to, it's like if somebody comes to New York for the first time, I always look at them and say, make a plan that you can veer from. Because 5,000 options is way more debilitating than 2. And, so for me, the internet, it's, you go in and you're like, I'll just follow this rabbit hole of people who that sparks with me. And then you end up in a tiny little circle of people who just feed each other the same thing over and over.
I like that. Make a plan that you can veer from, because there's just too many things to choose from.
Well, it's like, do you know how many people I know have come to New York, stay in Times Square, and don't leave a 2 square block radius, and end up going to the Olive Garden because it's just overwhelming?
I know.
And you're just like, yep, that's why you got to have a plan. Here, move it out. You can do this, boom. So, like, for me, like, travel is really just about finding the different in this world where it all seems so homogenized. There are people who are just so interesting, fascinating, different, not on Instagram, not with a look or a habit that anyone else knows of. And why do they do it? I always wanted to do a show called Lost Tribes, just really about subcultures and actual lost tribes, or tribes that aren't super well known. But it's just really about looking out there and seeing this different, fascinating, amazing place that still makes you feel like an explorer.
Do you keep up with Atlas Obscura?
Yes.
Either the website or
the
book. Do you find value in that? Because they are really trying to highlight off the beaten path places.
Yes, I do. Okay. I think it's interesting.
Just curious, because that does seem like one of those places where you can get, it's not your usual 1,000 things to do in Manhattan in your 2 block
Atlas
radius.
Obscura, you've got like Roads and Kingdoms. There's adventure.com is definitely, which I write for as well, is doing some stuff that's interesting. There's, a group called Tiny Atlas. It's definitely different. It's just, for me, what inspires and excites me is, feeling like you're exploring and feeling like you're finding something that resonates with me, whatever. And, and people like I don't really care about Italy. I just don't. Also, I've been there. Also, that's all right. I also don't really care about a beach. That's cool. I can't go diving. I've got weird ear issues. When I snorkel, that's great, but everything still kind of looks blue. And I hear the Jaws theme, I also can't get sun damage on me because I laid out as a kid with baby oil and iodine. So I had to burn all that stuff off, and it comes back real easy. It's just, I'm not a real beach girl. So certain things that excite, people on a larger, grander scale is perhaps not what is going to excite me.
Right. Because most people only have a couple of weeks vacation. So they have to dive into literally into a 2-week beach vacation or a 1-week beach vacation at a time.
Americans have not really figured out work-life balance for all the articles in Oprah magazine that are said about it, which is also why they wait till things get so freaking bad that they blow their life up like I did, or go and take their personal gap year, after a certain thing. It's definitely like, all right, let's just try to get the pendulum in the middle. Hold up. So yeah, and it's just not, it's like I have a friend who just loves a beach, and I'm like, girl, you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
I do love my Hawaii vacations because I don't take a lot of downtime. So if I can go hang by the pool.
Yeah, but also you live in Seattle.
Yeah.
I mean, it's rainy, man. It's cold.
Have you been to Seattle?
Yeah. It's rainy, man. It's cold.
Well, it is in January. But, honestly, because of climate change, I know it's changed. I've been there 28 years. I've seen the change over those years. We had 80-degree weather in February this year. So things are shifting a lot. Yeah. It's terrifying, but lovely, in a very bad way. But things have changed a lot, and it's gray, but it's not rainy all the time. But still, I still like my Hawaii vacation, and I do like to sit poolside, because I don't take that kind of time normally.
For me, what I love about Hawaii is going to Molokai, where people do still have subsistence living. You can go hunting for your dinner. It's also, again, it goes back to my childhood. What I love are the books. I love the history. It's like going down the Middle Rhine era. So, being half Jew, I've always been a little scared of Germany. We're going down the Rhine, and all of a sudden, it's bizarre when castles become redundant. But I did have this idea. I was like, what would be awesome is, it's kind of like when you go on safari, and the first time you see a zebra, you're like, ah! And someone's totally holding you back in the Jeep, and you're like, get up, man, I want to go run with the zebra. And then after 2 days, you're like, oh, Jesus Christ, where's the lion?
I know. Where's the wildebeest?
You sound like a jerk.
Yeah.
And you feel like one for saying it. Anyway, for me, the way I would love to really do the castles, and what would actually inspire me is, so there's like 25 castles in the Middle Rhine. Each one is a little town, and each one has its own weird, historically fucked up fairy tales or, local legend. Mm-hmm. Nothing really ended well in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
And so I thought, wouldn't that be great to do a drunken biking tour of the 25 historically beautiful castles, most of which you can stay in. And, some are like $1 a night and some are $1,000 a night. And literally just go down to the pub and be like, all right, so what happened in this tiny weird ass town? Oh, yes. Okay.
Well, that sounds like a story you could pitch to someone.
Yeah, it could, but it's exhausting.
Not Vanity Fair, not Vogue, but adventure. Hey, let's talk about, because we were talking about this when I first arrived, before we started recording, just about kind of the dark side of travel, the loneliness of it, because I think we've both experienced some of that in our travels. I mean, really, honestly, what we have to present on social media and in the glossy magazines and online are the really pretty pictures. And when you do talk about like kind of keeping it real and the negative side of it, it's not that often. And I mean, really, who wants to complain all the time on social media? Anyway, because I don't want to read somebody's complaints about it and really kind of first world problems. But it's not all that sexy to be out there all the time, traveling and staying in hotels and waking up and not knowing, which hotel room you're waking up in.
It definitely takes a certain kind of sociopath to want to live out of a hotel for the rest of his or her life. And I say that because there's one billionaire who I think his name is Nicholas Berggruen, and he literally lives out of hotels, loves, and you're just like, wow, that man terrifies me.
But he's a billionaire.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter. To literally want no
In other words,
roots.
He's not a backpacker living in a hostel.
Doesn't matter. Does not matter. At least in a backpacker living in a hostel, you have some sort of camaraderie. On my first book tour, this is back when book companies had money, and I went for a 3-week book tour, and I was staying in nice hotels. And I remember by the end of the second week, I was just crying every night, even though everywhere I was in Seattle, I was speaking at the Starbucks headquarters. And people had filled an auditorium and they were clapping for me. I was I didn't know where I was. I had to be on every day. I had to go back to a place. There was no one I could really talk to because I was so exhausted and I had no idea what city I was in. I was so lonely and I was just crying at the end of every night and just didn't know what to do. And that was on a book tour. And
limited run.
A limited run. And then when I was at Yahoo, even traveling with my crew, I did abroad. I was traveling for about 6 or 7 months out of every year for 2 years. And you forget where you've been. I had to be reminded that I had gone to Mongolia, a place that I had always wanted to go to, that I had read about for years, that I loved when I was there. And I forgot because all right, you're working 16-hour days. You are doing 12 days in a row. You come back, you get no downtime. You have to go back in the office, do a bunch of meetings. Here's this. I was sleeping under my desk. I was so tired. And you just, so it ends up to 90-hour weeks at some point. And you're just going, where was I? Where am I? I don't know. And you don't feel like you have anyone to really touch base. I'm not married. I don't live with people. I thankfully have a very strong home community. Thankfully, I thank God for that every day, so that my neighbors and my very close friends, here's the problem. They're married. They have kids. We don't talk every day. There's no one that I speak to every day unless I'm home and they're my neighbors. And so you start to feel really disconnected. And for the first couple of months, it's like what I found in India. First couple of months, it's exciting. It's fabulous. You're so interested. And then it becomes like anything. Been there, done that. What's next? It becomes Groundhog Day unless you have a specific mission. And even when you have a specific mission, if you don't have a home base, it's really lonely. It's really dangerous, actually.
So we know a lot in our community. We know a lot of people who don't have homes.
I do. And I've spoken to some of them, and there is a lot of anxiety and depression and what is my meaning?
Don't you think that they would have that problem even if they had a home base? I mean, I don't think that problem is necessarily inherent.
I think it's exacerbated.
Okay.
I also think it's someone like you. You're very lucky. You have a good marriage. You have someone to come home to. You have someone who, it's been a long trip. Let me download. You're going to get it. Oh, here's a story. Here's this. And also, frankly, as you've said, you don't suffer from depression. I do. It's exacerbated by certain things. So I know. But then again, having done it, I also know how to not trigger certain things. I also know when I'm in the beginning of a minute and how to combat that. And also when I just need to be like, all right, sorry, I'm not going out.
Is it specifically going out and socializing, or how do you kind of mitigate that?
It depends. I mean, travel is a mitigation for me. I'll be honest with you. As long as I'm not on a 6-month rotor moving from next to next, there is something good about, all right, let's bump it out. Let's bump it out to a new place. Oh, you're going to find this. What's this culture about? What's this? Oh, you've always read about this. This is good. There's all different tactics. I just think it can be. So it's a double-edged sword. It could bump you out of it, but if you stay too long, it can really sink you into it.
So it's finding the happy medium with that. I had someone tell me recently, her husband died probably 5 or 6 years ago. And she said, I'm not happy at home. I travel so much because I like who I am better when I travel, and I'm just not happy at home.
I think that's also identity, though. When she goes back into her home, it's this identity of who she was and what she's missing. Whereas when she goes out, she can be herself and it sounds like it was, whether it was a good marriage.
Which I think it was, yeah.
Exactly. Even in a good marriage, you forget who you are without the other person. So who are you again as a single person? Who are you as just you and not part of a unit? So it sounds to me like she's trying to figure that out, and it's probably very difficult because the unit was such a happy one. And also she probably feels guilt about it. Okay, I like who I am by myself, and I go back to the unit, and I don't know how to justify the happy solo with the happy unit yet.
What do you do just in general to kind of take care of yourself? Do you have daily practices?
I try to. I am not the most disciplined person, nor have I ever been. So I definitely do try. I definitely write my thank you lists.
Like a gratitude list kind of thing?
Yep.
Do you do that daily?
I definitely try to. And I have my what I'd like to accomplish list. I definitely have my meditations that I try to do. So every now and again, I'll get it on a gym kick.
Do you have a bigger purpose, a why, as they say, of why you do what you do, or what you would like to accomplish in the future?
Absolutely. My bigger purpose is, again, it sounds so trite. It's we are not as different as we seem, and to break the bounds of tribalism. Tribalism is so dangerous, and I've seen it from when I was a kid, whether it's just a neighborhood or race or class or gender, and to really speak more to the people who aren't being seen.
But tribalism in a good way or a bad way, are you saying?
Tribalism is always bad. Whether people think it's fun or not, like, oh, I'm at a Phillies game and look, someone just beat someone to death because they took it too far. There's fun, friendly rivalry, but at the same time, tribalism in general is usually pretty lousy.
So the way you're using the word is different than community, which you just said here on your street. You've got a community here, but the tribalism you're saying is more like maybe pack oriented.
Absolutely. It's more pack mob oriented. And it's also community is, while it is a sense of identity, it is not we all are individuals. This is not an overwhelming sense of we are better because.
And I'm anticipating the answer to this, but social media has just created more tribes.
Yeah. Well, it's social media has created the ability to really just kind of take advantage of people's innate tribalism. And don't get me wrong, I fight against it every day as well. Yeah, Sullivan Street's better than Thompson. We've got more shops, like whatever. I definitely fight against it. And I will say, yes, I am proud to be an American. I'm blessed to be an American. Do I think that America is, even under this administration, not under this administration, but even while we are having this minute in our history? Yeah, I think it's one of the best countries in the world for the simple fact that you can be anyone you want to be. You can literally start from nothing and get, if you're in the right place and if you have the right parents and if you get the right education, you can do whatever you want, and no one's going to look at your caste or your tribe or your whatever and say no. They might. I mean, granted, I've definitely had said no to as a woman, but I will say, and I'm also not a black woman, but I will say it's one of the only places in the world that you can overcome these things, where many places in the world you just can't. You better be a unicorn.
There is more opportunity here. There are people, and as a white woman, it's difficult for me to say this because I realize that I am of privilege just for that reason.
Yep.
But we do have more opportunity here, no matter your background. Absolutely.
And if you have, I remember once reading a story in the New York Times about the doctor for Al-Qaeda, for the Taliban or Al-Qaeda. And he was a Pakistani guy, and he was of the lowest caste member. And he got an education, and he made it through, and he actually made it. And he became a surgeon. And nobody would give him a job because he was from the untouchable caste. And you know who gave him a job? Was the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. So there you go. He wanted to work. Most people want to be able to work, feed their family, keep it moving. And when you aren't allowed the basic human rights, you know what? You'll go where you are. And up until recently, America was a place where you could find basic human rights.
Are you saying that our current administration has taken that away?
Absolutely. When you're blatantly racist, you're blatantly homophobic, you're blatantly misogynistic, this kind of alienation creates terrorists. It creates, and that's horrible to say, but it creates absolute deep-rooted resentment where you don't love your country anymore because you can't get anywhere, you can't do anything. I mean, the fact that they're separating children from their parents, I mean, no. You're ruining a generation. You can't do that. Where do you think these people are going to go? What do you think is going to happen to them? Odds are they're going to end up real pissed off, and probably in the United States. I don't want real pissed off people here. We got enough of that.
Do you keep up on the news?
You have to. I think if you don't, I think it's a little irresponsible, especially if you travel. You got to know, It's irresponsible to look at something and say, isn't this like the Maldives? I love the Maldives. Isn't it beautiful? And you look at them and go, the main island and the main government of the Maldives is so beyond corrupt that for a minute, they had the most number per population of fighters with ISIS. This is how much these people hate their lives. They're going to go join ISIS.
Well, there's two things here, though. There's the difference of keeping up with the news and being a responsible traveler. And then there is checking your news feed every 3 hours to find out what's happening in the circus.
Now, you know what I like to do? I like to say, and by the way, getting back to the Maldives, yay for them. It's like Dubai on the ocean, but there's really only 2 people getting rich. So no, don't go there. Go to somewhere else that's much more equitable. I would say for the news, the personal habits, you know what? Treat it like it's 1992, morning and evening, possibly in the lunch. See you later. Mm-hmm. You know, what the hell happened here? And in the morning, don't check too early.
I do, and it sounds like you'll disagree with this, but I do have to keep my head kind of in the sand about stuff. Like, I know peripherally what's going on, but it makes me sad and angry and almost paralyzed. I have so much indignation about it that I can't keep up with it because I'm an ineffective person.
Yep.
And I'm an ineffective business owner.
Oh, girl.
If I keep up with this
or
stuff.
If you go on the Twitter rants and then people pile on and you're like, "Blarg," I get it. I definitely say, like, I'll go on like vacations from it and I'm much happier.
Yeah.
However, I do have to read the news. I do. But I also choose my news. I subscribe to the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Economist.
Yeah, good for you.
I check out the BBC. I check out Arab Now. Just, I like to know and I like different perspectives.
Yeah. Al Jazeera?
Yeah, Al Jazeera as well, not so much anymore, just because it's not, just since the whole debacle with it. Anyway, but there's what is it, Arab Now? They do really good stuff. It's whatever is actually picked up on Apple.
Okay.
Apple News app
mm-hmm.
is amazing. Mm. I'm like, I want tech, business, world. Here's this. Keep it moving.
That's also, is it smart news where if you're clicking on something, it'll deliver more of that kind of thing for you?
Yeah.
On Apple News?
I like to choose my subjects as well.
Yeah.
It's definitely one of those things where you're just like, I like to know. I don't like to walk into a place and be like, everything is so hunky-dory. And you're just like, man, lift up the rug. You're going to see the roaches underneath. I want to know if there are roaches underneath. And, I'm cool. But I'm also, and even if I don't, I'm still lifting up the rug.
Hey, here's a question in terms of that, because I'm a bit out of the loop just in the last couple of years. I don't get invited on the same kind of press trips or the study abroad events at the White House because I'm not as involved in the travel blogging world. Are there still, and maybe you're not either, but are there still tons of fam trips and they're bringing people to Jordan and they're bringing people to these places to talk about how great they are?
I think they are. It's moved on to much more like Instagram influencers and stuff. Mm-hmm. Also because, let's be honest, like the travel publications have kind of dried up. So it's much more Instagram influencers and these kind of things. And yeah, I think it's just always going to be there. It's always been there. It's always going to be there.
Well, I just know that I know sponsored posts have, I don't want to say have gone away, but I know that they've changed their form and how information is getting out there. And I'm not clued into what's happening in the world at this point in terms of that.
Yeah, I think, listen, anyone who's got over a certain amount of Instagram followers and goes on these amazing trips, they ain't paying for it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And they're probably getting paid for it. And God bless. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, know what you're looking at. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love a pretty picture.
Yeah.
I certainly do. Do I actually think I want to do that sometimes? Oh, heck no. And also, I know I'm not going to go stay at a $900 a night hotel.
As we wrap up here, anything that you'd like to cover or talk about that we haven't hit upon?
I don't think so. I think it'll be interesting and great once women actually get their message out. We all have shared experiences, and the larger, especially in a certain age group. But the human experience, there's something about it that, we are lucky enough to be able to help and reach out and be able to talk about things in a way that people understand and it resonates and allows other people to think, hey, all right, now I can talk about it. Thanks for reminding me, Beth.
Hey, this is the Be Bold podcast. What does it mean to you other than wearing, and maybe you can even show them to me. I'll take a picture of them if you still have your kitty cat shoes. Other than wearing kitty cat shoes at the White House, what does it mean to you to be bold?
I think it means literally just getting out of your comfort zone. I always used to say, so my website, Abroad, the tagline is be bold, be brave, reclaim your life. And, sometimes people are like, well, what is bold for you? It's like going to Iraq. I'm never going to go to Iraq. Well, I get that is unique and a little bizarre. But I also understand that being bold is also sitting down by yourself at a restaurant's bar, turning to the person next to you and saying hello. And that can be in the neighborhood. That can be 3 blocks away. It can be 3,000 blocks away. Sometimes it's just literally doing something that you don't identify with yourself.
But are you uncomfortable with that?
Yeah.
You are.
I'm an extroverted introvert.
Meaning you re-energize by having your time alone, but you're out there.
I am. And I think a lot of people, because of my public persona, whether it's through my books or being on TV or seeing, my past work, have identified me as being this bold, ballsy, blah, I'll do anything, and, a lot of times it takes a minute for me, or I'll just be like, oh, am I really going to do this? Or, oh, and by do this, I mean, am I really going to look at that guy and be like, hey, how are you? What are you having for dinner?
So sometimes even that's difficult for you.
Yeah, it is. Because, you're having a bad day and you feel like a goober. And you're just like, oh, they're going to think I'm a loser.
When it doesn't really matter.
No, and they might not be thinking that at all. It's taken me many years to understand that other people's reactions to me have more to do with them than it does me.
I think you mentioned meditation. Has some of that come out of your meditation practice? Because I know there's a lot of, when you meditate and you have a meditation practice, you're learning all about your thoughts and your self-talk.
Yes, it's a way for me to manage it, but really the way that I got it was A, through therapy, and B, watching certain situations that would have normally driven me up a wall. And for example, one of my neighbors who I just loved dearly, I accidentally knocked over a plant and I didn't realize it. And she went off on me in a way that is not her. And then she didn't return my calls for about 2 weeks. And I was... At first, for a minute, I was like, what the hell? I got her a new plan. I said, I'm so sorry, all this stuff. And then we saw each other. She goes, I'm so sorry. I've been meaning to call you. I got so busy. I've been working 94/7. And I go, yeah. And she goes, and I'm so sorry. I so overreacted. This is what had happened to me the day before and the day up. And I went, oh, I get it, girl. Something that 4 years ago would have sent me into a tailspin. Because, I'm a horrible, literally I had to be like, why don't you just sit on it for a minute, Paula? Something's going on. And it was. And you have to realize a lot of people are going through just as much and have the same self-doubt and the same weird conversations in their head that you are. And so just keep it easy on them.
And it's really easy with instantaneous communication. With texts and email, not only to say the wrong thing, but then when you're offline for a bit, then that other person's talking to themselves about why you're not responding. And I always have to remind myself, whatever it is, it's probably more about that person than it is about me.
I've had people freak out on me because I didn't get back to them within a day on email. And by the way, I've also freaked out that people haven't gotten back to me within a day on email. So I'm like,
Well, I'm always impressed when people do get back to me within a day because I'm so bad. I've got my emails always full. And so I'm always really bad about getting back. And so when somebody responds to me, I'm like, don't you have anything better to do than to respond to me?
Exactly. And the answer is, I don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for getting back to me so quickly on
Of course. Well, I was so excited to talk. You're amazing. And I've always just really enjoyed your company.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, I'm glad we had this time together because we haven't had a bunch of time just to chat. It's a lot of in passing, but I've loved what you're doing. And like I said, that first impression was a huge one on me that I talk about and that I think about a lot. It's funny how you don't realize how one little thing that you do in this case, I'm talking about you, like how much it has affected me. And then I go on and I tell the story and it's probably affected 30 other people. As
it is funny. Like you don't realize good and bad, like how 1 minute can really just change stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool. Where can people find you?
Oh, they can find me Instagram and Twitter at PFRO, PFRO. Find me on Facebook, paula.froelich, or abroadabroad.com.
Awesome. We'll find you there. I will link to all of that in the show notes.
Thanks, Bear.
Thank you for bringing me into your fabulous home and introducing me to adorable Carl.
Carl's the best.
And your neighborhood, that there are literally 3 juice places around the corner.
There are.
Right across the street from each other, which I can't believe.
Well, actually, the best one you didn't go to, it's Melvin's Juice Bar. It's the Rasta Juice Place and the Jamaican Shack across the street.
Well, I haven't been yet. I ended up not going
Melvin's.
I'm going to go to Melvin's. I'll get directions from you on that, and yum. So, Paula, see you on the road somewhere. Come to Seattle. I'll show you how sunny it is.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Thanks. She's one of a kind, isn't she? And I mean that in the very best possible way. I already want to sit down with her again and just keep chatting. I think there's so much more there to uncover. As bold as I like to think I am, I know there's room for improvement when I'm around someone like Paula. She's a real inspiration for me. Hey, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast. When you do so, it helps give the podcast more visibility in whatever platform service you're using to listen to it. And please share this on social media. You can use the hashtag #BeBold. Or just simply share it with a friend. I'd so appreciate it. It really helps in spreading the word. I'm always on the lookout for new podcast guests. If you know of someone or you yourself would be a good fit, simply fill out the guest submission form on the BeBoldPodcast.com website. I only record in person and often record in Seattle, but as you know, I travel a lot, and that gives me the chance to meet up with people while I'm on the road. For show notes, check out the BeBoldPodcast.com website for each episode, and there you can also sign up for email alerts each time a new episode comes out. While you're online, go to the Be Bold Podcast Facebook page and give that a like. You can connect with me by friending me on Facebook. I'm Wandergal on Instagram and Wanderluster on Twitter. You can find out more about me by visiting wanderlustandlipstick.com. Sign up for my newsletter on the Wanderlust and Lipstick site, and you'll receive a series of tips for making your travels safer. I often have giveaways for some pretty awesome travel gear, and this month it's actually an Eagle Creek carry-on bag, so it's well worth your time to check it out. I think it's like $160 value or so. As I mentioned earlier, you can find out about the tours I lead at wandertours.com. And ladies, don't forget to join that Be Bold Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Be Bold group. You're going to love the positivity, the encouragement, and support from that community. Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Be Bold podcast. And until next time, be bold.